in terms of you all being natives to this digital environment? Are they trying to reach out to you? You talked about chat reference. You talked about things like that. I think, lots of times people, instead of coming in and talking to somebody in person, would rather send them a chat message.
Well, for sure, I've seen an increase in offering ebooks, for example. So that's a big thing for me, because when I was in high school, I had to read. I had to read a lot. It was a bit of a problem for me. I didn't like really borrowing books from the library, because I had to think of returning it back. And when when I really had the option, I just downloaded it from the website. It wasn't illegal. It was very convenient for me. So that's definitely a good thing for me. It
Yeah.
was a good thing for me.
I think for many people it's a good thing. How many of you prefer to read electronic materials to print materials? Well, not as overwhelming a majority as I would have thought. I mean, I have gotten and this is especially for fiction reading, pleasure reading for myself, I do it all online. I mean, I take my Kindle with me everywhere I go, and it has 1,200 books on it. I don't run out for a long time. It's just, if it runs down, the battery discharges, I'm in trouble. And I also lost one once on a long trip, which was a complete disaster because I had my entire reading material on my Kindle. But I think people are very mixed in whether they would prefer to read it online or actually take a piece of paper and underline it. And I notice people who read things electronically oftentimes make print copies of it. And there actually has been some research shown that if you do underline things and read and make notations, that you learn it better, you retain it better.
But it's more of a technological challenge, I would say, right now.
I agree completely, because I can underline on my Kindle, I can make notes in it, I can do things like that. It's just, there's something this research is, but you're right, it's technology. There's some sort of a physical, taking your hand and moving it and doing something and having it go to your brain and having you remember it. But I think it's just a matter of time till we are used to doing it, on electronic.
And technology gets more mature, it makes it better for us.
It's sort of interesting to be talking about the future of academic libraries, because obviously we don't know what in the world is going to happen. 20 years ago, nobody would have ever foreseen what the internet has done. So who knows? I mean, I'm with you. We may be talking something that's going to be completely revolutionized. We won't even, we may just all get it implanted in our brain. We won't have to do anything. But it's just hard to know what technology might do in the future. Because I think for the first time you see artificial intelligence doing things that we would never have thought it could have done before. So, but you do find users that they like things about the library that they like, and there are lots of things that I think they still do not understand. And I think what we have to understand is there's more than one kind of user. I'm going to show you at the end of this a film clip from a new library that's just opened up near me. And it's a really wonderful library, but it's not a library for everybody. Lots of people do not like this library. It looks great, and it has lots of wonderful features. And it's wonderful for certain types of people. But for other people, it's not. And I think that's one of the things about serving users. They all have different learning styles. They all have different preferences of how they learn and where they learn. And the library has to be very adaptable and have lots and lots of flexibility in terms of how it approaches the users. Okay, we're going to go on to the librarians. Now, I noticed a few of you think you're going to be librarians, but today I want to talk just a little bit about some of the changes in what librarians are doing, and the librarians and the staff. And I had to have this keep calm and ask a librarian, because I think that's a nice thing to think about when you're having an information emergency. There are a lot of trends in the way librarians work in academic libraries today. And I think, first of all, I should say that in the U.S., and many of you may know this, but in the U.S., almost all, to be what's considered a professional librarian, you have to have a master's degree. So for years and years, the people who went to work in libraries in libraries, in academic libraries, were very similar. They had all graduated from one of the schools or programs in library science, and they came in with a master's degree. That was just the 1950s. That has been the entry-level degree for librarians in the U.S. And I know that's not true of the Czech Republic. But we had a very, very homogeneous type of people working in the library. Everybody understood everybody else. They all came from similar backgrounds. But now we have such a great variety of people. And we've also changed the work environment, and most people now are working in teams. We used to have a very hierarchical library. We would have the director. Then we would have the assistant and associate directors. Then we would have the department heads. And then we would have, subheads. And then everybody would be in this hierarchy, and orders would come down from the top all the way to the bottom. That hierarchy has been splintered, and most people now are working in teams. There's still a director, and there may be a team leader. It varies from place to place. But the old idea that you'd start at the bottom and work your way up if you wanted to be the director, that ladder almost isn't there anymore. It's become much harder for people to advance in terms of having a clear set of positions that you would go to. But librarians are getting used to working in teams, sharing responsibilities, bringing people with different skill sets together and have them do the task of performing the library jobs they do. So because of this, we have a great diversity of backgrounds, and lots of people are not coming in from LIS backgrounds. So our old homogeneous, everybody's just alike, we all come in with our little MLS stamp right on our forehead, and you know that I know what you know, and you know what I know, and we're all one of a kind. It's not there anymore. So people are coming in from IT backgrounds, from various specializations like public relations, human resources, many types of, we get lots of lawyers working in libraries, many different backgrounds that are coming to work in the library. There has been a lot of talk in the library literature in the U.S. about feral librarians. You all know what feral cats are? Feral is like wild, like you're not part of the group. So there is a man named Jim Neal, who is the library director at Columbia University, and he's the one who first started talking about feral librarians. And it sounds terrible, but feral librarians are the ones who are working in libraries, but they don't have their MLS degree. I think it's true that when you go to a program that specializes in library science, you get socialized into the profession. You know what to expect. You know what librarians think. You learn about things like freedom of access, intellectual freedom, all these good things we talk about in schools like this. People who are coming in from other disciplines may not know anything about this at all. And how do you socialize these feral people into what it's like to be working in a library? And a lot of people have been trying to think about this, because maybe in some ways we need to learn from the feral people. I mean, maybe some of the things they're bringing in will be good for us. But at the same time, I think there's certain values that libraries have always had, a real stress on service, a stress on providing information freely to people, intellectual freedom, that if just like the bedrock upon which our institutions operate. And many people have not learned about those as part of their program. So libraries are thinking about these people and how do you socialize them actually into becoming librarians? And do you want to socialize them? It's a good question. And library staff are doing things they were never doing before. And I know in the Czech Republic you all are doing exactly these things, the same things, but I'm just going to go over a few of the things that I think are most interesting, and then you tell me what else you all are doing. So, librarians are the digitization experts of the world now. In every academic library, they have been called upon to work with faculty, to work with people, to digitize things, and to make digitized things available, and to do all that metadata work, and making things available. So suddenly, people that were just, people thought they were archivists, and suddenly they're digitization specialists, and everybody wants a piece of them. So I think that's one of the emerging roles of academic libraries, working with all of our digital resources, as most of us realize that we have unique collections that are never going to be, they never were in print. There are special collections, there are manuscripts, there are rare books, and suddenly there is not only we have the technology to digitize them, but people can use them and be made freely available. So librarians are playing a key role in that digitization. A lot of librarians, I went over 3 weeks ago. I went over to Duke University because this class I'm teaching in academic librarianship, the students wanted to learn about exhibits librarians. I never really know much about exhibits librarians, but they have somebody there, and a lot of libraries have somebody whose primary responsibility is to prepare exhibits and to make things, especially some of their rare materials, some of their ephemera, things like that. And it all has to do with this outreach. Libraries are trying to make people find them attractive, so they want to come in, so they mount these exhibits. So it's almost like a mixture of a museum and a library in some ways, because these exhibits are designed to be intriguing and to draw people in the door. And then once they're in the door, we hope they will use the facilities. Marketing and public relations. How do we let people know the library exists? How do we tell them all the wonderful things we have in the library? And how do we let them know the library really does do things like buy those digital journals and things they're using? So marketing the library, getting people inside it, and letting people know what we have is become a big job in lots of libraries. Fundraising. Now, I don't think fundraising is quite as important in the Czech Republic as it's become in the U.S., but it may be just as important. The U.S. in academic libraries, they are funded by their parent institution, but none of them have enough money. And it used to be that we used to think, well, we're going to be supported by our parent institution, and that's going to be fine. That's all we need. Now it's become the responsibility of the library director and others within the institution to go out and raise money, to go out and actually identify people who could be donors and solicit money. And when I went to Duke the other day to talk to the exhibits librarian, my class also talked to the library director. And Duke, in the U.S., there are two kinds of institutions. There are what we call the privates and the publics. The public libraries, the public universities are supported by the state, so they get at least a certain baseline funding from the state. The private universities get their funding from tuition and from donations. The librarian there spends a great deal of her time fundraising. And she just brought in a $21 million gift. She just brought in a $1.5 million. She was talking about, I think, you can see why. If you're a library that has a budget, and you can bring in, you can get these extras with gifts from people. And most library directors work on fundraising, and they have a staff that works on fundraising with them. So they identify the people who might be donors. They go out and the word they use is cultivate them. In other words, they get friendly with them, try to find out what they're interested in, and then they go out and ask them for money. In the U.S., and I'm not sure it's true in the Czech Republic, because I know it's not true in Great Britain, if you give money to a public institution, to a philanthropic institution, you get money off your income tax, so you don't pay as much income tax. You can sort of deduct that money from your income tax. So our system is set up that makes it more, I think, more hospitable to people giving money. So, if you were at my school in Chapel Hill and you graduated, well, the year after you graduate, you get a lovely little note from us saying, hope you're doing well, and would you like to send us some money? And all through your career, you would be getting that same note. Come back to Chapel Hill and see what we're doing and give us some money. Support the students of tomorrow. We supported you. But it's absolutely true. No student pays his or her whole tuition because the state is subsidizing, other people are subsidizing it. So we come back to the graduates and ask them to give back to us. If somebody does especially well, boy, would we like to get friendly with you, because, Bill Gates' wife graduated from Duke, and there's been a lot of getting to know Melinda Gates at Duke, because she is a graduate they think has got money that she could give. So, and she has given. So we're all looking for our wealthy grads and also wealthy individuals who just like libraries. So fundraising is a big part of it. And then assessment. I don't know how much you're having to do here, but in the U.S. we are having to count everything, to assess how well we're doing. We have accreditation of our academic programs, and a big part of accreditation now is student learning outcomes. How much, okay, you're all very bright students. You come here. How much did coming here add to what you know? Were you just bright and you would have learned it anyway, or did actually coming here and taking classes make a difference? We have to try to measure our student learning outcomes, what impact our program have on students. And librarians have to try to measure what impact, going to the library, what impact the library have on student learning outcomes. So it's a big challenge, all this assessment. And because of the impact on student learning outcomes, you know that there's a huge impact now on librarians being involved in student learning. User instruction, information literacy, and I know that's a big thing here, that you all are trying to work with students and help them learn. Are any of you actually working in positions where you are working with other students to help them learn? A lot of our students have internships or like graduate assistantships in the university library, and they're teaching a lot of those classes. And the students love to have our students teach them because they're being taught by somebody who's almost the same age as they are and has a lot of the same attributes they have. And the academic library at my university, actually, I don't think would get along without our students because they do there's a librarian who coordinates it all and takes the lead in it. But in terms of the teaching, the students do it all. I bet they teach well over half the classes and maybe more. And they do a great job of it. And of course, it's a wonderful experience for them when they're going out looking for jobs. So a big emphasis on teaching. That's one of our graduates who graduated a few years ago, and I happened to find her picture and I put her up there. She's in Denver. Okay, so more involvement in student learning. And then trying to figure out the way libraries can extend beyond the library building itself, because we know people do not have to come to the library building themselves. So you see librarians. At some universities, every incoming student is assigned a personal librarian. So, hello, I'm glad you come to school here, and your personal librarian is Ms. X. And you're supposed to go to that person whenever you need library assistance, because you've got a person who's been assigned specifically to you. So librarians have offices outside of the library. They have offices in the student union, or they sometimes have offices in the school, the residence halls, or in departmental offices. Trying to find ways that they've taken themselves outside of the library where people are not going and saying, here I am, come and ask me an information question. And finally, there are a lot of liaison librarians who are actually specifically assigned to work with departments or schools. And there's to go to faculty meetings and to work with the faculty there and actually be that link, that liaison between the library and the academic team. And to take it to the last extreme are the things we call embedded librarians, which have become very, very popular in the US. Now, embedded librarians came, I think, it was first in the medical libraries. They had these embedded librarians that would work with the medical teams. When they'd have a team of doctors going around working with patients, they would have a librarian or information specialist. But now, university libraries have put embedded librarians and put them into classes. So they work with the faculty member in designing the information aspects of that class. And they are embedded within it. And it's a silly little cartoon here, but the reason we have these embedded libraries is because most library instruction in the US has been what they call one-shot instruction. There's a day that people come to the library and they learn. A class is brought up and they're taught about the reference sources or the resources they can use in that sort of class, in that sort of course. So librarians have one shot at them. And I think what you see oftentimes is the students have that day and they just sort of, they think, well, it's not the regular faculty member, we'll just sort of take it easy, they go to sleep. So so the librarians were only involved in one part of that, the whole research process at the very beginning. And most students just did not understand it. So the embedded librarian concept really allows a great deal more than that. Librarians sit in on classes, the students know they're there. They can sometimes they help the faculty member design classes. Sometimes they even help in the grading of the students, the research projects. So there are a lot of ways that if you go to a traditional class, an embedded librarian could work. And also, in an online class, you'd have a librarian being part of that online class, contributing to a space that would be called library resources or something, and being available to students electronically, virtually, in just the way an embedded librarian would be in a regular class. So our embedded librarians, I think, are probably here also. Probably have maybe a different name for them, but that's the way we do it. So I think there are really a lot of advantages to them, because they really do allow a librarian, information specialist, to be available to students from the beginning to the end of the research process. And it also is a great outreach for the library, for the library to actually go out to the departments and let the faculty see what's going on. Many faculty don't know what's going on in the library at all. They have, you know, they are those digital immigrants, if they've immigrated yet. Some of them haven't. And you know, they remember the library as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They have no idea the changes that are going on. And so this is, allows the library and the faculty to work closely together, which is what you'd hope to do. And also, it does appear, the research that's been done, students learn better if there is a librarian embedded in the class. But of course, there are lots of, it's hard to the scalability of it. If every librarian, if every class had a librarian embedded in it, it would obviously have a great, we'd have to have a lot more librarians than we have now. Not that would be a bad thing, but it would, we would need more librarians. Yeah.
In an academic library is position which names is embedded librarian. Yes.
That's what they call it.
It's the same as reference librarian, subject librarian, and other position. My work is embedded librarian.
Are you embedded?
No. Embedded librarian is problem because it's not possibility to translate in Czech language. But I know my question is, it is a special professional position, embedded librarian?
It is a special, and usually, oftentimes it is somebody who's working in user instruction. So it's probably a reference librarian, maybe a subject librarian, and in addition to being in the library, they also work with a faculty member in this position.
Yes.
So I don't think anybody has their entire position, at least in academic libraries, is called embedded librarian, because you'd have to have more than one class. But if you're a liaison librarian to a department or to a faculty, oftentimes you might be an embedded librarian in many of their classes.
I'm like embedded librarian in other libraries, so not only in academic, for example, in special libraries. Especially in medical libraries, there are. And I know that's probably where they originated. I've never heard of one in public libraries, just because there's not the need for teaching in the public library. But and I don't know how it would translate in Czech. You know, I know. Just a moment. Kdyby vás napadlo, já jsem zatím vymyslela nejbližší český název. Nasazený knihovník. Jestli vás napadne něco jiného.
Možná bych se příruční knihovník, ale to je takový trochu nepříjemný.
A this problem is Czech.
I know. You know where the term came from? In the Iraq War, there were people called embedded journalists. The whole thing came from this idea of the embedded journalists, and these were journalists who went over and actually fought with because the things were, instead of the journalists reporting on what was going on, they'd actually be out there on the front line, which I think would be very scary. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So those were embedded journalists, and so from that word.
So something like assistant, perhaps.
No, it's more like emerged, or in the middle of, like embedded, inserted.
This is question of my dissertation thesis because I need Czech language for embedded librarian because more books about this topic, more articles. Czech.
Well, you make a translation and you'll become the expert.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
Mohli by být frontový knihovny.
Frontový. No.
First line.
First line, that's good, yes.
First line. No, first line is nice Czech language.
It sounds good. I understand it, so it must be great Czech language.
Linnaeus.
Tam to má víc významu.
Like we are speaking it like a soldier, like a first line, like a.
And this is somebody who would be, embedded, so put as a part of that first line, put into it.
First going hammer and then.
Yeah, so the journalists, they were reporting on the war, but instead of staying on the outside reporting, they were part of the troops. And so they would write from the battlefield, they'd write stories about what was going on in the battlefield. So the librarians are like,
Other is librarian in team.
yeah, that's part of it, but it's not quite that too. It's like integrated or submerged or.
It's a library evangelist, right?
That's. I think this is a fertile topic for exploration. You will find a new word for this, but it does go on in the U.S. These embedded librarians. So it's just a new thing. So those are the people. Some of the changes in the librarians, what they do. I want to talk to you about some of the changes you've seen. Like, are any librarians in the Czech Republic doing things that are different from this, or in addition to this, or similar? Have you all ever had a librarian as part of your class? No? What are some most interesting things people do in the libraries here? People get jobs in libraries. What's interesting things they do? Our students get library jobs with strange names to them. I half the time don't know what they do, but it seems like the big fad is to put a strange name. I had a student who graduated. She's called the Discover Librarian. And then I had another one was called, I can't remember, all these titles are just really odd. But I think really what they're trying to do is they're trying to find some ways to, make the librarians connected to the students. We also have students that are called transfer librarians. We have some students who come to school, so many students begin as their first year in one university and they stay there the entire 4 years. But we also have some people who transfer in. They come from another academic institution, sometimes from 2-year colleges, and they come up. So there are a bunch of librarians who are called transfer librarians, and they work with these students to help them successfully navigate from coming from a smaller institution to a large academic library. And because they've discovered that the dropout rate of these students is higher because they come in and everybody else has learned how to do it, and nobody remembered they didn't learn. So lots and lots of new jobs in libraries, lots of interesting jobs in libraries. Okay, keep thinking about this because we're going to come back and I'm going to give you a few more things. I want you to look at one more thing. The changes in library buildings. This to me is one of the most fantastic changes. So in the 1980s, people said, oh, everything's electronic now. We'll never have to build a new library. Never, ever. Libraries are the thing of the past. But every year, new libraries open. And the ones that aren't new have to keep renovating to keep up with the new changes. So there's been a lot of talk about the demise of the academic library. Nobody goes to the library anymore. The library, the print collections are out of date. Nobody needs the library anymore. You hear it all the time. But at the same time, we have this whole new idea about the library as the third place. And I don't know whether Oldenburg has been translated into Czech, this whole idea of the third place that everybody needs. Everybody has a place at home, and everybody has a place at work. But we all need a third place, a place that's neither work nor home, that we can socialize, we can create, we can learn in. And the libraries, the academic libraries and the public libraries in the U.S. have really bought into this being a third place, to be a community center, a hub of what's going on. So the library as the third place is a big concept. So if you look at the way libraries are being designed and redesigned, the key word is flexibility, group study, lots of study spaces, having access to many types of materials and many types of study spaces and cultivating social interaction, and flexibility, group study rooms. The whole idea that there'd be a big, long reading room and people would be reading each in their own seat has gone. Because students now, many students like to work together. And libraries have brought into this building lots and lots of new